Hello, it's April from April's Home, and today I thought I would take a tour of the garden and show you some of the things that we've added for this summer. This is the little corner garden, and you can see a little flower pot there that we got for Mother's Day. The sun is kind of shining on these, but I've got some snapdragons growing here really nicely. And some other pretty flowers. This is one of my favorites. I've got these flowers in pots as well. That is a common thrift, and they grow really well out here. This is the apple tree, and you can see here some of the little apples that are starting to grow on the apple tree. I was worried we wouldn't get very many apples, but it does look like there are plenty growing. We had a very late frost right when they were flowering. I have pictures of some of the beautiful blossoms, but we had a lot of rain and a lot of cold weather really late, but it looks like they're doing great. Here I've planted a new rose and another snapdragon there, so just a few flowers and things in this little side garden. This is a plant that I've never planted before. This is called Jacob's Ladder, and I thought that that would be a fun one to see what it's like too. We've got some pretty purple blossoms as well that the hummingbirds really love. We got a bench here all cleaned up. I've had this bench in the past, but it was requiring a new paint job. So we painted it green, and it looks really nice with the little stone planters with succulents. There's a little pail that I got my grandson that you may have spotted in my Bi-Mart and Tractor Supply haul. He really loves it, and he has been using it both for digging and feeding the chickens. Here are the chickens. They're doing great. Some old ones and some new ones in there. And here's my little side garden. This is where I grow most of my veggies. We have a really pretty smallish sized yard just in a little rural town neighborhood. Here I have planted a blueberry and some snapdragons and some nasturtiums. The birds, we've had a bunch of starlings, and they keep plucking away at a lot of my leaves. So I'm hoping that they will leave them alone and that they can get established a little bit more. The starlings had babies, and I think it's their babies. They've been coming here just kind of pecking away at things randomly. So we may have to put a cover on this blueberry at some point, but otherwise they are at least not plucking away the little berries. These are some beautiful dahlias that my friend grew, and I'm going to plant those in that corner garden there that we just saw. And here is my the start of my vegetable garden. There's still a lot of work to be done on the pathway, a lot of weeding. You can see some of the weeds that we've plucked there. But I thought it was more important to get the garden started because we had such a late frost. This first bed here I've planted with green beans, and they've all come up, so I'm really happy about that. Again, you can see some of that bird action there. I watched one today from my window plucking out a little seedling, and then they just dropped it. So hopefully they will leave this alone, especially as they get a little bit bigger. But there is plenty here and plenty to thin, so I think it'll be just fine. And I always plant little marigolds in the corner of my green bean bed. Here is the next bed. You can see a fern growing here wild. I just think it's so beautiful. These are all jalapenos. They were all from different batches. Some are a little bit bigger, some are a little bit smaller here. I've also tucked in a few onion plants here. Just along the side, it looks like we've got a volunteer little pansy, a little Johnny Jump Up over there. Then I've planted a marigold here, and a little cosmos right there too. I just like to sprinkle flowers throughout the vegetable garden just for a little spot of color. We were going to redo our beds this year. We were scheduled to redo them. You can see this bowing out quite a bit, but with the price of lumber so high right now, we decided to wait a little bit longer. These are working just fine, so we thought we'd give them another year before we replaced them. You can see in the back here quite a bit of creeping Jenny. This stuff will really get away from me here if I don't watch it. It will fill the whole garden. You can see that it's already on around this whole half of this whole bed here just in 1 year, but it's really pretty. It's a vibrant green, so I do kind of keep watch on it, but I leave it go as long as it's not getting in the way of anything. Here I've planted a little tomatillo in this little yellow pot. Here I have some things I still need to get planted, a couple more mosses and some herbs and a succulent. And again, this is still project season, so still have quite a bit of weeding to do. Little piles here waiting for our yard debris to be picked up. And then here again, some damage of this basil by a bird. So I plucked that one out, and then I got some new ones. Still need, this is from last year. I have gone around and plucked out some succulents that I need to replant. So that's going to be one of my projects, but this pot has broken. So I'm going to be transferring it to some other pots, but it's just sitting there. That's one of my projects. Same with this little pot. Just a bunch of succulents that needed to be removed from wherever they were, so I chucked them in this pot for now, and I'll be able to repot those later. We've got this little blue pot with some moss and a snapdragon, and a pot here with a bunch of basil. Cute little frog. We've got these little pots over here, sort of in a more shady little spot where I have a bird dripper, a really pretty white succulent, and some black violas, and some petunias and snapdragons. And here in this bed, this is a lingonberry plant that I'm going to try to grow. I found a cellar of some of the more local type of plants, so I got some new ones to try this year. So a little lingonberry. Then in this pot here, I call this one of my little salad bowls here. So I've got a bunch of different kinds of salad and arugula and purple romaine here. One of the lettuces didn't make it, so we have sort of an incomplete circle there. So I'll have to try to grow another little start of lettuce to put there. This is our pink lemonade blueberry, and we've got some nasturtium and some marigolds and a little patch of Corsican mint surrounding it. And we've got a big gooseberry here. It's doing really nicely. And then this bed here is my artichoke bed, and you can see some of these beautiful purple artichokes here. They're doing so nicely. They're very, very pretty. I'm really excited about those this year. So we've got some purple ones and some green ones here. There's a little baby green one. And then down in the front here, I've got some parsley. It's not doing well, so I need to feed some of the plants in this bed. They're just not doing great. I've got some kale and chives and parsley and things sprinkled around in this bed here underneath these big artichokes. This bed here is one of my last ones that I still have to really weed through. You can see grass has taken over. Succulents are everywhere. We've got a couple of currants in there. Just being overtaken. So this is a bed that I really need to tend to, but I had to save this one for last while I could get the rest of my garden in. Things that had grow date times and things like that I really had to tend to first. So this will be next week's project. Same with weeding around my garlic, but my garlic is doing great. And look at this big patch of oregano here. I'll be harvesting that soon as well. Then we have more garlic here and some snapdragons. And I think we've had a dog or cat walk through here and knock down a bunch. So I'm going to go through, kind of pick some of those back up and firm them back in the soil and see if we can get them to come back. And we've got some more chives here and some dill and another tomatillo. Here we have another currant. And it does have some aphid damage here that I'm kind of looking at. So I'll have to try some insecticidal soap or something. I have introduced a lot of ladybugs, and I've even seen ladybugs working on them. But otherwise, the plant still seems pretty healthy. It's got some berries on it here and there, so I think it'll be okay. I'll just have to work on that a little bit. And here's my sage here with its pretty purple blooms that the hummingbirds absolutely love. Next to it is my rosemary. I'm going to be working on trimming this up. We trimmed up a bunch of it. We need to trim the top, but I was waiting for it to finish flowering again because the hummingbirds really love it. So now that it's done flowering and we've got plenty of sage for the hummingbirds, I can tame this giant rosemary here back quite a bit. It'll look really nice by the end of summer, I think. Then over here is my tomato bed. Last year this was a potato bed, and you can see that despite my best efforts, I have still got some potatoes growing, but I've just decided to leave those few. I saw a plant being sold that was called a ketchup and fries plant, and it was a plant with some tomatoes on the top and potatoes on the bottom, so I thought we would see how those do in that corner. However, I'm keeping them out of the rest of the bed. These are mostly Roma tomatoes, and down here at the end I've got a couple cherry tomatoes, some sun-gold cherry tomatoes, and yellow pear cherry tomatoes. But the rest are Romas because those are the kind I love and we use a lot of. Also planted some more chives in the corners here. Then this is my big, beautiful bed here of lettuce. I'm so happy how this is growing. It's definitely ready to start harvesting. We will not have to buy lettuce for quite a while now. Over here I have a couple of varieties of kale, and then I've got some frise and arugula and some different green lettuces here. Again, they're just doing beautifully. So very excited for all the sandwiches and salads that I'll be able to make with this lettuce here coming up any day now. The grape is also unruly. That's another project that we are waiting for next week to start. But we do have all the poles ready to go to tie this up and get it growing nicely. But you can already see the starts of the little grape bunches. So that's really good to see. A lot of the grapes around this area did suffer because of the very cold spring that we had, but it looks like mine will do just fine. Over here is another lingonberry bush with a little nasturtium there and a mushroom that the kids got me for Mother's Day. Here is my currant garden too. I've got both red and black currants here. Those are also doing pretty well. This one looks a little lacking a little bit of leaves that it normally has. Again, I think that's from the cold we had. But you can see some little currants there already. Got some pretty moss growing down here at the base. Here we have another blueberry. And here we have a couple of salmon berries. The same person who I purchased the lingonberries from also was selling salmon berries that grow really well here in the Pacific Northwest. So I'm hoping they'll do great in this little spot here. And my daughter got me this little Sasquatch here. You can kind of see it. It's a little bit dusky right now, so you can't quite see it, but there's the little Sasquatch there hiding behind salmon berries. One of the legends around here is that they eat salmon berries as part of their diet. So I just thought that was pretty fun. She also took me and her mother-in-law to a Bigfoot-themed escape room for Mother's Day, and that was really, really fun. So those are my salmon berries. In the back you can see some little ferns and my little maple here with a fern that has decided it is growing along with it. This is a huge sword fern that's been growing for quite a few years. It started out just being under this maple here, but grew up over it, and I just think it looks really pretty, so I leave it. And then here are some little columbines. Here's some more blueberries and some bushes that I'm going to plant in the front yard. And then this is another one of those neglected corners that I just had to wait on while I was getting the rest of the garden in the very few days in between rain that we've had around here. But we do have a nice hosta growing there and a black iris with a very big weed right next to it. So we'll have to get to some of these little neglected areas as we have more sunny days coming up and as we have gotten in the rest of our vegetable garden already. Now we can take time to work on prettying up some of these beds that definitely need some attention. So this is what this yard looks like from the back angle. You can see again, we need to weed that pathway, but all the veggies are getting a really nice start. I'm very excited about this lettuce here and all the kale. So now I'll go ahead and walk you to the other side of the garden where we put in some new beds this year. On our way to the other side of the garden, though, I'll show you really quick some of our flower gardens here. This is where the dog has some free reign, so we will be working again on some of the landscaping here as we have those nice days coming up. We're going to put some more bark mulch here and things like that, but we did add a really pretty rhododendron in a pot so that our dog wouldn't ruin it, and it did really well. It's just at the end of its blooming cycle, but it's really beautiful. Here's another really big blueberry that I have next to the chicken house. You can see lots of berries getting started there. I've surrounded it with these beautiful lime green and fuchsia petunias. So I'm very excited to watch that one grow. The blueberries do really good along this fence here. They get a lot of heat, and they're really protected from different elements, I guess, here. They just always do really great here. So decided to bring them back in pots here. Again, since this is the area my dog has free reign, he's really, really large dog. It's best that they're in these really tall pots. We've got some beautiful Mother's Day flowers there in a pot, and another new shrub here that was really pretty when it was blooming. Here's how the fig tree is coming along. It's starting to leaf out again. A lot of people with fig trees had some really late leafing out of their figs because of that cold we've been having, but I'm hoping my fig catches up. Got some more flower pots here, and this is a tree I'm super excited about. This was a Mother's Day present from my husband, and this is an olive tree, a special variety of olive tree that is supposed to be able to be grown here in the valley of the Pacific Northwest, here in Oregon. So I'm hoping that I can get this to take off. They do say it's best to grow it in a pot until the trunk is an inch or 2 inches or something like that around. So it'll be living here for quite some time. And we'll get that staked up. It's kind of tilting this way a bit, but it's doing great. And we'll see how this project goes. I'm very excited about that. Also surrounded it with the same lime green and fuchsia petunias. I've got some more flowers there. This is our other apple tree in the corner. The birds will love this. They always visit their feeder and hide in the apple tree here. And you can see this is full of apples as well, little baby apples. Next to the apple tree, I've planted a couple more pots with blueberries. We had a big heat dome last year that destroyed like half my blueberries. So this year I did buy quite a few new ones for pots and things. So got these 2 in pots out here. And this here is my asparagus garden. Right now the asparagus are just tall ferns. So they're actually taller than me right now. And we won't go back in this bed today as it's getting a little bit late in the day, but I've got 4 pots with blueberries there. Just got them weeded and topped with some peat moss. And then in the back corner here by these 2 little trellises, we've got some thornless blackberries and some raspberries growing. And I'll share more with you on the berries down there as they get to growing. This is my little shade garden here, my little Pacific Northwest shade garden. I got this little cedar tree, and when we visited the giant redwoods down in California a couple of years back, came as a little seedling. So we've just been letting it grow, and it's doing great. I've got a little fern by it and some zinnias. Over here, I have a little tiny hydrangea with some moss and some more little zinnias. And then here is my little pine tree, just my little miniature forest here. And another little mini Sasquatch from my daughter, and a little fern growing under there as well. Here is the other rhododendron. This one hasn't been quite hit by the sun yet, so it's doing a little bit better. It's flowering a little bit longer. And our last little tree here, I need to come and prune this. It's actually a spiral shrub. But as you can see, all the new growth is kind of filled in the spiral. So I'll be coming in with some pruning shears and getting that back into a spiral. And it also has a really nice, healthy fern at the base of that. So that's my little mini forest here, shade forest. And you can see I have some amendments here still, waiting to go in the garden, waiting to top my asparagus. Also in the entrance to the asparagus garden, I have another little blueberry there. And in our side garden, we've never really gardened much over here aside from succulents. It's always been a place for just tools and things like that, but we decided to clean it up and to use some spare stones that we had to create a couple more gardens. So here you can see a little turtle with some succulents in it, and this is all of my squash. I've got some acorn squash and some zucchini here. I've planted a yellow squash plant here. It hasn't come up yet. Here we have a big rock pile that I'll be spreading out and turning into a really pretty succulent garden, hopefully coming up here in the next couple of weeks. I planted a couple more grapevines. I'm planted both in one to see which one would make it. They did get some damage from our really late frost when they were still in their little pots before they got planted. It's kind of a surprise little storm there, but we'll see how those do. My other grapes do grow wonderfully in these big pots, and we've had them growing now like that for many years with lots of grapes. So we're going to start a grapevine over here. These are my potatoes. As you can see, they're doing really wonderfully. I'm growing them in grow bags. I've got 8 grow bags here. I started 6 and then I added 2 more. So these 6 are doing great. You can see one has topped out pretty much. I'll probably add a little bit more soil to bring it all the way to the top. And all the rest are catching up to that one as well. They're all different varieties. Planted like, I think, 4 different varieties, both red and gold and mixed and baby potatoes. So we'll have a lot of wonderful potatoes. Here are the 2 that need to catch up. But you can see a few little green ones shooting through the soil there. I grew just a little bit of corn there, just again as a decoration. This was a little bare root plant here. You can kind of see a little stick here. It is supposed to be a dewberry, which is kind of like a vining berry, like a blackberry or something. I'm not sure how well it's going to do. It didn't look very healthy when I took it out of its package, but we'll see if it comes back. I don't know. If not, we'll plant another berry in there, either like a boysenberry or something like a blackberry or a raspberry. In this pot, I've planted some yellow squash, but it's not up yet. It's kind of taken its own sweet time. Since it hasn't come up in a whole week now, I'm going to give it a little bit longer, and if it doesn't come up, I'll replant. Sometimes seeds are just duds, but we'll keep watch on that. And then this is a boysenberry plant that I decided to plant here. I'm going to run the vines down the fence that way, and the grapevines will come to meet it halfway, and then also go down the fence even further. Here we have some of our peat moss and some extra stones. Back when we had different garden layout, we kept all of our stones to be able to use for other beds. There's our firewood and some extra project wood. And then this is another new bed that we put in here, and these are all pumpkins. They're very closely planted, so I will really have to feed them a lot. I do a lot of intensive, closely planted plants because I have a very small yard, so I have to really make do with the very small space. So I plant things really close together, just keep them really well watered and fed and things like that, and they tend to do pretty well. So I've got some sugar pumpkins down here, a medium-sized pumpkin here, and then these are giant pumpkins. So we'll see how they do. I've never successfully grown a giant pumpkin in our tiny backyard. Usually I stick with sugar pumpkins or mini pumpkins, but we'll see. If they grow, it'd be great fun. It'll be really fun if they do grow big pumpkins. I think my grandkids will all get a kick out of that. In the back, I've also got a couple of bulbs planted that I had to transplant. We'll see how they do. That's what I'm going to plant here in the fall, are bulbs for a cutting garden. And then when they're done blooming in the spring, I'll interplant them with squash every year. So it'll be like a spring bulbs for a cutting garden and squash for the fall and the summer. So you can see I've got to teach my dog not to walk through here. We've got some big footprints from him in there. Also, I've planted a couple of the Corsican mint plants here and here. Thought that maybe the Corsican mint would deter some of the pests, but we will see. So that is my garden. Definitely getting pretty late in the day, so it's getting pretty dusky, but I just wanted to get out here before our next rainstorm, which is due tomorrow, comes. And we got a lot of work done this week and are really excited for the Memorial holiday coming up on the weekend. And it's nice to have the yard well underway. I will continue to update you as the garden progresses throughout the summer. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at my garden tour. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you later. Goodbye.